It's the savvy side of 9 to 5. Listen.
It's not a lie if you believe it.
Laugh.
We had a little fun, because it's a very long day, you know.
And learn.
Negotiation. This is what you do in business.
This is the Focus Group with Tim Bennett.
All right, let's go already.
And John Nash.
Pucker up, Buttercup.
With a focus on career, the consumer culture, and marketing from an LGBT point of view. We're all business, except when we're not.
Hey, welcome to the Focus Group. John Nash here with my good friend and co-host, Tim Bennett.
My après ski gear.
Your après ski gear. Welcome to 2017. All information about our show is at focusgroupradio.com. All our social media is focusgroupradio.com. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And we do have a phone number here at the show. It's 914-362-8747 or 914-FOCUS-GR. And like Tony the Tiger would say, grrr. So yeah, welcome to 2017. We want to thank everybody who tuned in for our live broadcast on December 21st. We had a ball doing it. We want to thank the guys in the booth. Do you guys have the booth cam going?
Booth cam.
We got John and Garrett. John's on the right, Garrett's on the left. Booth cams, yeah.
There it is.
There it is. There it is. And they did a great job with all the calls. It felt like we were on satellite again.
Back in the old days.
The old platform.
Calls from all over the country.
All over the country. Coast to coast. Got
Right.
calls coast to coast. Everybody sent some great notes. The socks that people won are going out in about a week, is what I've been telling people when I respond to their emails. So keep your eyes peeled for that. We are going to be instituting sign up for the socks to join the focus group. We're deciding we're going to be calling it like the focus group panel. We haven't figured out what we want to call the new register.
like the panel.
The focus group panel. you know.
FGP.
Oh, there you go. There's a marketing guy right there.
FGP.
Turn it into an acronym as soon as you can. FGP.
FGP.
So here we are, Tim. We talked on our last show about resolutions. I don't like that word. I like plans. I have plans for 2017. Are you holding to yours so far, even though it's only a couple days in?
Yeah, no, so far I am. As I said, I think we talked on the last show that I decided Frank DeCaro had inspired me to follow that Lose It app.
Yep,
That
I downloaded that,
Lisa
too.
Lampanelli turned him on to. And so far I've been doing it for 7 days, actually 14 days, but into the new year, 7 days. And I keep track of the food. And as Frank said, some days if you do go over, it gives you a date as to when you'll reach your goal gate or your goal weight if you continue to eat like that. So far so good. It anticipates that I will have my goal weight reached sometime in the summer. Maybe if I do, I'll wear one of those Borat onesies. I'll come in here and
I would pay cash money for you to be in the Borat after.
the Borat onesie.
Slim down.
Yeah. So, but we'll see. But I'm and I actually feel better, although my body's adjusting. But we'll see. We'll see how I do. But I need to do it. So I'm not killing myself about it. What I like about it is I'm not denying myself anything. You have to watch your portions and your calories.
No, I cracked down, or clamped down, I should say, on the junk calories that I've been consuming, and that
See, you like a cake. You like cakey and you like chocolate and all that. I can do without
Here's the
that.
problem.
My problems are nuts.
So you gave me for Christmas a big bag of Snappers.
Yeah, Snappers
Okay, so
from
Snappers are pretzel caramel chocolate.
dark chocolate. Yeah.
Right. So a Snapper is great if you have one or two. Snappers are not.
Is that bag gone?
No, because now the clamp down is I can have one or two Snappers a day.
You know what you do? Put them in the refrigerator or the freezer.
Okay.
And then when you take one out, it's a lot of work to eat it.
So in other words, you make the snack.
So you enjoy it.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'll enjoy it. It'll take you a little while to
Hey,
eat.
before I forget, we have a really great guest joining us after our opening segment, and that's Michelanglelo Signorile. It's sort of a tradition of ours. Not sort of it. For the last 7 or 8 years.
7 years. He missed 1 year because of his book coming out 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And he didn't visit us until April. But he's been our first guest every year since we started, which has been great.
Yep. And he'll be joining us in studio to talk about some of the stuff that he's been talking about on his show over on Satellite, specifically the minefield that may or may not be in play with the LGBT community after the latest or the last election. So, definitely stay tuned for Michelangelo because he's always a fun guest. And as you said, last time we had him on, we talked about his book, It's Not Over, which is strangely what we'll be talking about again today, because the book literally deals with how you can't take your eye off the ball when it comes to rights. Once you get them, saving them, maintaining them, and the whole.
Yeah, no, he mentioned that a year and a half ago when he started writing, or 2 years ago, and it's unfortunately come true. But we'll see.
You and I
where we land.
you and I have talked about this a lot. We have the cup is half full mentality on this, and I refuse to be a pessimist until I'm forced to be. I think it's going to play out differently than everybody's predicting. Yeah. Like the election itself, I don't think anybody really has the roadmap figured out. I think I talked to you about this yesterday. One of my things every year is I set a fitness goal for the year, which kind of focuses my cycling and my gym, my strength training. And this year, I think I got to do a little bit more research. I'm going to do a Grand Fondo in Colorado that I told you this. It goes from the town of Idaho Springs to the top of Mount Evans. Mount Evans is the highest paved road in the United States.
Is that this summer?
It's July 15th.
You gonna smoke pot up there?
I always forget that Colorado. Yeah.
I don't know. Can you smoke pot and ride a bike?
I'll put it to you this way. Friends of ours gave us some candies when we were last on the West Coast.
Right.
And it was, pot candy. And I had one, and then I went on a bike ride, and I thought, nothing's happening. And then I was flying down a hill I go down quite often, but it's a big hill. And I'm flying down the hill, and I'm not even braking. I'm not even thinking. I'm having a ball. I thought, uh-oh. And that I knew that something was infecting my judgment.
So not a good time to have it.
I think you got to be a little careful about that. Right. But so I think that what I thought when I chose this goal of Mount Evans, I thought, okay, now I got to really concentrate on cardio, because if you start at 7,000 feet and you're riding to 14. I'm not so sure it's a strength issue. I mean, you have to have the strength to do it, but I think it's going to turn out being a lung thing, because I think you're going to get lightheaded at 10,000 feet or whatever it is, and
Yeah.
All right, so first new year, what was the first new thing that caught your eye this year?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
It's I struggled because I read a lot and I saved a lot, and then I thought, well, I don't know. So this one that I picked, it's been in the news. It was enacted January 1st. It's a new French law that established workers' rights to disconnect.
Yeah, I read about this.
It went into effect January 1st. So the law requires companies with more than 50 employees to establish hours when staff should not send or answer emails.
Gives them their evenings and their weekends, right?
Right. The goal,
in theory.
The goal is to the goal of the law is to make sure that employees are fairly paid for their work, and preventing them burnout and making sure they have private time.
And Gerard Depardieu?
Well, I don't know. I was looking for a Frenchie with wine. So the woman is on her BlackBerry. She looked French to me at a cafe, busy.
None better than Gerard Depardieu. Okay.
Take the fromage at the Bougainiste and then got a thing of wine. So the measures were designed to ensure respect for the rest periods, they said, and it requires companies with 50 employees or more to negotiate with their staff as to what the rules are going to be. If they can't come to an agreement, then the company has to post rules of some sort of charter as to what their email rules are. And they said of course, the U.S. has been looking at this. They said a group of Stanford business professors estimated that workplace stress due to after-hours emails cost between $125 to $190 billion per year in the U.S. with lost productivity, which is about 5 to 8% of our healthcare costs. So they said our workers were obviously overworked. This is not a new thing. Volkswagen, which is our partner here at the Focus Group, in 2012, they blocked all emails from employees after hours.
They still doing it?
Well, this is in Europe, so I don't know if they're doing it in the U.S. Although I do know that our folks at Volkswagen, they had 2 weeks off between the Christmas holiday and New Year's, and there was no correspondence. They're off. They're done. They shut down. Daimler Chrysler, the owners of Mercedes, also did the same thing. They actually delete emails received by employees for employees while they're on vacation. So if you went on vacation and you got emails, they're all deleted. So you don't even look at them while you're on vacation.
I like that.
And so it was interesting. We had a similar rule. It wasn't a formalized rule when I was at Subaru in the marketing and sales department, that there was to be no contact after hours, after business hours and weekends, unless somebody died, unless there was some sort of death or something, which happened to
That
me
only
twice.
happened twice. Yeah, and it was.
And it was a death
It
both
was a
times,
it
where I had to
wasn't a good
call
death,
and
yeah.
tragically try to work with our president and CFO as to how to get some bodies sent overseas.
I really wish
But
more
anyway.
companies did that because I do think you need downtime.
Yeah.
And you don't
do.
need to be the beeping and the whole thing. Well, what caught my eye actually happened the day, 2 days, 1 or 2 days after Christmas. It was the day that Kerry was giving the speech about Israel.
Carrie Fisher?
John Kerry.
John Kerry.
Carrie, she'd already passed away, right? So there's all this stuff is going on in the news, and I turn on NBC Nightly News, and one of their news items, and we'll go into this in a second, is about a toy that malfunctioned at Christmas. And so this toy is called a Hatchimal.
Yeah.
And so, John, on the PowerPoint, that's actually a video. Let's play that. This girl with the egg on the counter. This is an ad for this crazy toy.
Something is happening all over the world.
Oh, it's tapping back.
No one knows where they're from or what's inside.
I know where they're from, and I
It's
know
up
what's
to
inside.
us
But
to
anyway,
find out.
China.
China.
China. Hottest toy, by the way, this season.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So you know what I'm talking about? So this
Yeah.
is the Hatchimal, right? Spin Master is the company that sells it. It's an interactive toy that hatches from a plastic egg, and it's faced major criticism because of what happened on Christmas Day. Customers complained that Hatchimal took hours to hatch, if it hatched at all, and for some, the batteries didn't last long after hatching. And in a mixed egg household, all right, so they had households that they called mixed eggs. So let's say you had 3 kids
Right.
and you had 3 Hatchimals. Maybe 2 eggs would hatch, and then
That's nature. Sometimes an egg doesn't hatch.
I wish somebody would say that. Okay, so the toy retails for $50. Some parents bought it for $250 on eBay.
Or more,
$250.
thousands.
All right, so the next thing I pulled up are some of the tweets, and John will probably zoom into some of these. So some guy, there it is. Hatchimal ruined my 6-year-old's Christmas. All the effort and it done nothing. And it did nothing Christmas Day. Now look at the next one. I think you thought your child the wrong reason to enjoy the holiday. I think what they meant was, I think you taught your child. And look how he answers. She's 6-year-old.
6 years old. Give it a rest.
If YPU, I guess that's YOU, have nothing nice to say, then don't speak.
I didn't. I texted.
And then there's some down here.
Did you respond?
Yeah, you blasted on social media. So set a toy ruined your blah blah. Please, this is the state of it. Then this irate father, really, Spin Master? I call your customer service line and you get disconnected because all agents are busy. I have an issue to discuss. 4 exclamation points mean he's angry. That's the defective Hatchimal there. Can't break out of its damn egg.
This is what happens when every kid gets a prize. So this is the whole mentality that our generation's responsible for. If our friends would have children, all think everyone gets a prize. Sometimes the egg doesn't hatch.
Sometimes, well, see now, Tim would have been the cranky uncle at
happens?
Christmas. Sometimes kids,
My father would have ripped the thing. You could break it open.
sometimes in the wild, even if the chick does hatch, a hawk will take it away and
It's
eat it.
eaten.
You know how everybody was going on about fake news?
Yeah. Is that fake news?
Is it even news? Is this even news?
Well, it was news because it was such a popular toy.
All right. John Kerry in Israel, Carrie Fisher's passed away, the Russians are hacking, and then we have a Hatchimal that won't hatch. Now, I just say to you that might be a personal interest story at the lowest rung, but that was on the national. That wasn't like the...
Caught your eye.
That was affiliate. It did, it did catch my eye.
Yeah.
Sounds like a fire alarm going
I
off.
hope it's not a fire alarm. We're doing a live show. The so all right. Well then,
So it's and then Spin Master, and this just goes to our live show. If you tuned in, you know that Tim's list, which was a
Right.
joy to participate in again. We did toys from the '60s.
right.
So the other thing that caught my eye in the same article was Spin Master wasn't the only company inundated with complaints. Mattel's Barbie Hello Dream House, the updated Dream
Right.
House, is an app-driven, voice-controlled version of the classic. Apparently that faced backlash from consumers because the house would give them error code 18 or error code 11. So irate parents were calling Mattel because something would go wrong in the Barbie Dream House would get error code 11. I mean...
See,
In
I
our
thought-
day and age,
Yeah. Well, it was simple.
Legos don't break.
I thought you were going to talk about that Alexa thing. Did you see all the problems with Alexa?
Yeah, kids are ordering stuff on their parents.
Well, or porn. The one little kid, did you see the one? I should post it to Focus Group Radio if we don't get shut down. That the one little kid starts talking to Alexa, and the thing says, "What type of dildo would you like?" And it starts going, then it starts reading the list of pornography that the parents, I guess, had loaded or something. I don't know. And the father's trying to grab the thing and shake it and shut it down. It's hilarious. The little kid's just looking at it. And then the girl who ordered the cookies, 4 pounds of cookies, and
and a doll
yeah.
house. Yeah. So that's what caught my eye.
All right, well, now we'll do some history.
Some
Those
history.
who fail to learn from history are forced to repeat it. Enjoy this lesson from Tim, and remember, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
That's true. Here we are, January 7th. Today's Fruitcake Toss Day. And I looked for a fruitcake, John, to get you
Wait,
because you told me you like fruitcake.
I actually don't mind it if it's kind of
You
fresh.
said that, and I don't believe you. But anyway, there's.
I don't know why you don't
So
believe
they
me.
said that if you have a fruitcake and you haven't eaten it yet, today's the day to toss it.
All right.
And they actually do the very first great fruitcake toss took place in 1995 in Manitou Springs, Colorado. And the event is judged on how far you can toss the fruitcake.
Brick. It's a brick.
And they also now are starting to put wheels on them. They do a little fruitcake derby cars, too, and they race them down the hill. It's also National Tempura Day. Do you like tempuras? Delicious deep-fried Japanese dish, lightly battered.
I don't mind tempura.
Do you know where tempura came from, though? It's a trivia question. I had no idea. It's not Japanese. Want to have a guess where it came from? What country introduced it? To the Japanese.
They introduced. Was it the Dutch?
No, close. Who else was sailing around doing nothing?
Well, the Portuguese. The
Portuguese.
Who else is sailing around doing nothing but discovering things?
They went to Brazil. They speak. What did Portugal bring to Brazil? The language is about it. So they brought tempura to Japan. It's actually related. So it actually is Latin for, I'll say it wrong, quattuor tempura, which means ember days. And it's how the Catholics would eat fish and vegetables instead of meat. They would put it in this batter.
Okay. All right.
1782, the Bank of North America opened in Philadelphia. It was the first commercial bank in the U.S., and that bank is still there. It's now actually houses the Society of English-Speaking People. Whenever there's something for the royal family, something going on, it's actually quite a fun place.
At that building.
It's at that building, and right across from it is the Visitor Center. So if you're ever in Philly, it's
Visitor Center for Independence Hall?
Yep.
Okay.
Still
I
right-
know exactly what you're
still
talking
right
about.
there,
then,
yeah.
yeah.
1789, Americans voted for the electors that chose George Washington to be president because people weren't smart enough. Remember, that's how
That's
the
right.
old.
That's how the
Here's
how
George.
The whole college came about.
This one's for you, John. Thomas Stevens in 1887 completed the first worldwide bicycle trip. He started in April 1884. It took him 3 years. He went 13,500 miles on a penny farthing, which would be a good drag queen name. So that's a penny farthing, one of those with those big wheels. He had trouble in the U.S. He had to walk over a third of the trek in the U.S. because the roads are so
We have no
bad.
paved. Yeah, we had no paved.
He had
roads
problems in
there.
Africa, too.
Oh.
Still would. 1896, the Fannie Farmer Cookbook was published. She was known as the mother of level measurements.
Okay.
You know why? She's the first one to standardize measurements, because before it would say a piece of butter or it would say a pinch of this, so she was a tablespoon, a teaspoon.
I didn't
a
know it
cup.
was Fannie Farmer. That
Fannie
did that.
Farmer, yeah. 1904, the distress signal CQD was established. 2 years later, it was changed to SOS.
Save our
You know what
ship.
CQD was? You can read it there. Come quickly, danger. CQD.
Oh, I think I like SOS. In fact, SOS was first used with the Titanic sinking in 1914.
Well, how would that ABBA song be? So when
1914,
you're near me, darling, can't you hear me? CQD. Would that be?
ABBA.
1968, the cost of a U.S. first-class stamp was 6 cents. I have another question for you, John. On our iMacs or iPads or whatever, I can't find the symbol for the C for cents. It said I'm supposed to hit Option and +4 or Option 4, and the cent symbol will come up. Can't get it to work.
I should look into that for
I'd like you to figure that out for the next show.
All right. That's my challenge. To find the cent symbol in the hidden keyboard.
Yeah, because it's not on the
Okay.
keyboard.
All right.
1980, the U.S. President Jimmy Carter signed legislation that authorized $1.5 billion in loans to bail out Chrysler. Seems like a bargain now, considering what it cost to bail out GM.
Boy, oh boy, yeah, huh?
1990, the Leaning Tower of Pisa was closed to the public because it was
too
leaning
much.
too much. Now, as you know, you and I, John, that picture in the middle, if you're watching on the YouTube, is in Brenton, Texas, which, as you know, is where the Leaning Tower of Pizza is. Remember?
Yeah, BRITT.
Remember she showed us? Because the real Leaning Tower is in Britain.
In Britain, Texas.
She was all wrong, the poor thing, and she called it the Leaning Tower Pizza, but that was our friend at the Barbed Wire Museum that,
Devil's Rope.
yeah, she told us about the Leaning Tower
One of our
Pizza in
favorite
Britain.
experiences on that particular car trip, cross-country trip, yeah.
1996, the biggest blizzard, or one of the biggest blizzards in U.S. history, hit the East Coast. More than 100 deaths were blamed. I remember that. I was snowed in. Did you get snowed in?
I
96.
remember the blizzard
You didn't get
quite
as much
well.
snow as us.
I remember it quite well, yeah.
And in 2002, I was unaware of this. You probably knew it, but Microsoft introduced a device called Mira.
Actually, I saw this one slide in the deck, and the mirror is on the left, right?
Yeah.
I had no idea this existed, and this was
Way
like
before the iPad.
some kind of tablet thing.
Tablet, just like the iPad, apparently. And but it never took off, and obviously then Apple came in and did their
The
own
iPad,
tablet.
yeah.
So that was so what happened in science?
Science. Week in science.
Don't be blinded with science. Here's what you need to know from the week in science, according to John. It's Poetry in Motion.
One of my favorite albums. Tim, can you name the name of the album that Blinded by Science came from?
I forget.
The Golden Age of Wireless.
That's what it was. the
Thomas
Golden Age
Dolby.
of wireless.
Okay. January 7th in 1610, Galileo Galilei, what a great name, discovers the first 3 moons of Jupiter. From left to right, if you're watching on YouTube, it's Io, Europa, and Ganymede. Now, Io looks like a pizza. Europa in the middle, frankly, it's ice-covered.
How big are these?
What do you mean, how big are they?
Are they as big as Earth?
No. But they're slightly bigger than our moons. At least Io and Europa are, and the last one is Ganymede. All right, the next event is January 8th, is the birthday of none other than the world-famous Stephen Hawking. He'll be 75 years old.
How old is
on
he?
Sunday. 75. That's terrible. You know, he should have, by all rights, he was diagnosed with ALS in his youth. And by all rights, that is a terrible, terrible disease, debilitating. And he's a
Well, the fact that he could have lived that long.
He's a miracle to have lived this long. He's an English theoretician. He's the Lucasian Professor of Mathematics at Cambridge. The title was formerly held by Sir Isaac Newton. Okay, on the far left is the youngest picture of him. The far right is his wedding day with his wife, and he already has a cane there because that's when the first.
Did you see that movie?
A Beautiful Mind.
Yeah,
No. Sorry, that was.
I forget the name of it now, but I wanted to like it, but I didn't.
Eddie Redmayne played.
Thought it was kind of boring.
Hawking. Yeah, my mom loved it. It was very Hollywood.
Oh, your mom liked that other
romance to
crazy
me.
movie too.
And then at the last slide for Stephen Hawking, he's been in popular culture a great deal. So on the left is a picture of him in Futurama or The Simpsons. Right. That's Matt Groening. In the middle, he actually was on one of the Star Trek The Next Generation episodes. And on the far right, he's floating in the zero-G plane. Now, you know I've taken a ride on the zero-G.
See, I thought, where's your picture?
I should have put mine up there, too. I'll have to do that one day.
I thought that was you, actually.
That's the plane we flew in, and they had him up at zero-G, and I had fun. Okay.
You did have fun. I remember. I think you had hair then, too. It was up a little bit.
No, I had this was,
No?
Yeah, I didn't have hair. Although
something was up. Something was fluttering in the
wind. There was a girl
wind.
next to me that had long hair.
Is that what it was? It was all in your face?
Up,
It looked like your hair.
She was funny. She's the one that said, let's look out the window. It was a big mistake. Okay, on January 9th of 1968, the Surveyor 7 probe was the last Surveyor probe that Mars sent before man was going to the moon. Now, what's cool about this picture that I found is that's Surveyor number 3, so not the one I'm talking about. But one of the Apollo missions landed close enough for the astronauts to go to this unmanned probe that had been launched a year or two earlier, which I thought was kind of fun. So that was done in advance of the lunar manned missions to see about
collect dirt.
And you know what they found, Tim?
Dirt.
Dirt was dirt. Dirt's dirt. Wherever you go in the solar system, dirt's dirt.
Go up there and get dirt.
And last but not least, January 10th of 1901, Texas. Crude oil in Texas was found at
Texas Tea.
Spindle Top. This is the famous Spindle Top well on the left in Beaumont, Texas. Shortly thereafter, that field was turned into that picture of, I don't even know how many oil rigs are there. Like it was like 50 or 100 within a year or two. That particular field that they found in Texas produced 17.5 million barrels of oil before it was kind of tapped out.
Well, the new Secretary of State will look.
You mean the Secretary of Energy?
No, the Secretary of State, Tillerson. I think he's at ExxonMobil.
Yeah, well,
Poor thing had to leave with $108 million in retirement.
oh, I'm sure he knows. Maybe his country home's called Spindletop.
Yeah.
So that was the week in science.
So business birthday.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
Doesn't seem possible, but he's 71 today. Jan Simon Wenner. Do you know him?
Rolling Stone publisher.
He's the founder of Rolling Stone, along with a friend of his, Ralph Gleason. He was going to school in Berkeley. He dropped out, and he co-founded Rolling Stone in 1967 with the help of a loan from some family friends and his wife. He got married in 1967, and then almost 30 years later left her for his what he calls domestic partner, Matt Nye.
So that's the.
They have three children.
What is the age difference?
Matt,
You wouldn't know that?
Well, I didn't know. They didn't say how old he was. Matt Nye. I didn't look him up.
Well,
but
he can't. He's not as old as Jan Wenner.
Well,
that
no,
is for
he's
sure.
not as old as him. But there was a lot of pictures of them. I was going to post other pictures, but I remembered there was some controversy around him because they said that he would, if he didn't like an act or if he got mad at you or something, he could keep you out of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh, really?
He also owns U.S. Weekly and Men's Journal.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
So he's our business birthday today. Happy birthday, Mr. Winner.
Only show in the universe. We always.
Show in the universe that does business birthdays. So hey,
we're the only show in the universe that has what coming up?
Michelangelo Signorile. So listen, stay tuned. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got Michelangelo Signorile joining us for our first guest.
A long and happy tradition.
Happy tradition. 7 years, I think. We'll say. Yep. Stay with us.
Brought to you by the award-winning Volkswagen Golf family. Let's make some money.
He's the business manager, let him manage.
This is the Focus Group.
Champagne! Champagne for everyone!
Hey, welcome back to the Focus Group. John Nash with my good friend and co-host Tim Bennett, sitting to my right, or it would be stage left. How does that work?
You're right.
Yeah, it's my right, the audience left, is none other than the incomparable Michelangelo Signorile, host of the Michelangelo Signorile Show on SiriusXM's Progress, and author of the recent book, It's Not Over, which we actually had the pleasure of discussing with Michelangelo when it came out. And again, we're going to kick off by talking a lot about your book, because everything you talked about, I don't want to say that you're like, you have a crystal ball in that apartment somewhere, but it's kind of come true, right?
Worse than I even expected.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, Happy New Year, and welcome to 2017.
Happy New Year to you, too.
It reminds me, Michelangelo, that there was Larry King often said when there's ever something that is as shocking that happens and he never knows what to say. And I wrote down, he said, I always go to one question to ask somebody to start things off. What happened?
That's Larry King's
That's
one
what Larry
question.
King would say. He would say to anybody, and he would say whenever there was something that really you needed to dig into.
What happened?
What happened? And what do you think happened?
What happened in terms of LGBT rights specifically, or Trump and the larger disaster that happened?
I think for me, I was at a holiday party over break, and there was a lot of discussion about the President-elect Trump, and I had made comment, and I referenced your book and some other things about it being it's not over, and how we need to be focused and we need to pay attention, and use the example of the women's rights movement, the African American rights movement, and they all looked at me, all gay men, and they said, wow, we all voted. Was kind of and kind of shrugged. And I said, well, who are the leaders in our community? Who would you say is a leader in the community? And nobody can give a name. And whether it was from HRC or from GLAAD or any of the other groups where we used to, the names would roll off your tongue. I think of Elizabeth Birch, but censor.
That's
I don't
the
really.
one name that would roll
Right.
off my tongue.
So I mean,
HRC,
when someone says, well, we voted, but it just didn't go the way we wanted. I mean, I think that's an awful simplified.
Yes, and I think what happened is that the media had no idea how to cover Donald Trump, allowed him to obviously get away with a ton of stuff that I'm sure, you've talked about and lots of other people have talked about in building him up, not questioning, but also on issues of civil rights, particularly LGBT rights, they allowed him to present himself as somewhat better than most Republicans, or not really caring about that, or sort of bluffing about it, and kind of being a guy who wink, wink, nudge, nudge is from New York and has gay friends and isn't going to be so bad. So I think that a lot of people, when he was trying to reach out to the African American community, he wasn't really trying to reach out to the African American community. He was trying to reach out to white Republicans who are moderate to say, I'm not really a racist, right?
Right.
That's what he did on LGBT stuff. Everybody has a gay person in their family. Everyone has a gay child or a gay cousin or mother or whoever, right? As long as they could believe that he wasn't really anti-gay and would strip gays of rights and wasn't a racist and wasn't this and wasn't that and wasn't really going to deport the 11 million people because he said, no, I'm not really going to do, then they were okay with voting for him. So these gay people would say, well, I voted. Well, yeah, but what happened with all of these other people? The media allowed him to present himself, and certainly there were those of us who were exposing that, but they allowed him to present himself as more moderate on these issues. As soon as he got in, I mean, he picked Mike Pence.
Yeah.
That should have been the biggest sign, right? But as
Yeah.
soon as he got in, look at these cabinet picks. They are the most anti-gay people you could possibly put in these various departments.
Well,
Do you think that's Pence's doing?
Oh, from a
And
transition point of view?
Yeah, in picking the cabinet folks.
Pence is running the transition. So
Yeah.
I think Trump probably said, you handle the domestic stuff. You do all this. Look, he gave an interview, not Trump, Paul Manafort, his campaign manager, gave an interview, the previous campaign manager, to Huffington Post earlier in the year last year. And he said, in this business model that Trump uses for his presidency, that, he would run it like a business. He's a businessman. Paul Manafort said he wouldn't be like the CEO or even the CFO. He would be like the chairman of the board, and the vice president would really be the CEO. Well, then they picked Mike Pence. So that's their plan. Now, chairman of the board, is kind of checks in, is hardly there.
Yeah, go golf.
Comes for a
And
meeting.
they come in, there's a pad of paper and a pen and a glass of water, and then they leave, yeah.
As soon as I saw Mike Pence, I said, that's it. Because if he's the CEO, then we're in for hell. And I think Trump probably doesn't know much about a lot of these people. Betsy DeVos, for example, the
Education, yeah.
secretary nominee, she's a billionaire, and to him she's successful. But does he know that she's been an anti-gay crusader for 20 years?
I think she is fully invested in conversion therapy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was at a get-together the other night, and the mood was, it was festive. We were visiting friends whose daughter was in from Rome, and everybody drifted into this conversation, and it immediately went down the road of, I hope we survive. I hope it's not Armageddon. I hope the nukes aren't flying. And I might have been one of the only voices that simply said, this is going to be the most interesting 4 years of a test of our Constitution, in the sense of, we have multiple chambers of government, and I'm optimistic that with Chuck Schumer and with a couple other individuals that maybe there will be checks and balances. I could be completely wrong. But Tim and I look at it optimistically and say, this is a perfect rallying cry for the community to pay attention again. I hope that we don't just lay down and wait for something to happen. I think it's a really great opportunity to begin to invest in the grassroots, our organizations that have helped us in the past. And that's one thing I want to ask you, I'm leading into that, is where are the organizations, or are they all just waiting? Like, I haven't heard a peep out of HRC unless I'm not paying attention to the same news.
They've spoken out. They've done their thing, in terms of how radical and extreme Pence is and these cabinet secretaries. But they weren't prepared for this. They were prepared to help Hillary Clinton choose who should be in her cabinet, and maybe some of them would be in her cabinet or in the administration as well. So
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
they weren't prepared. They're not going to lead it. Establishment groups are not going to lead it. It's going to have to be from the grassroots. And I do agree with you that, well, one, it is a check of our Constitution and whether or not system, of checks and balances works. But that said, it is going to have to be the grassroots. Some former congressional staffers have already put together a plan of creating a left Tea Party, because this is what the right did after Obama
Quite
was
successfully.
elected, quite successfully, and they had to tell lies and use racism and horrible, ugly things. We just have to tell the truth. So
You make it sound
right?
so easy. We just got to tell the truth.
But it has to be from the grassroots. And I think where we are much better positioned is when you go back to the 80s and you look at what happened with the gay community and AIDS and Ronald Reagan, we were in such a terrible place. I mean, we were literally dealing with people dying all around us. And even within our own supposed, the party that we voted for, we were hated. Even among liberals, we were hated. We're now in a different place. We're now, in many cases, part of the driver's seat of the Democratic Party. There's more of a connection with the other groups, Latinos, African Americans, others, together, working together. We don't have to deal with as much of the homophobia that we had, cross-homophobia. So I think we are going to be able to work together. I think what happened over the past several days with the House
Gutting the
deciding
ethics
to gut the
committee.
ethics, I think that was an example of how the grassroots can operate. The media, of course, has credited Trump, who came in late. I think he came in after he saw where everything was going.
Yeah.
Because Kellyanne Conway was already arguing that it was all great and fine and the Republicans could do this. So we can organize and we can fight. I do worry, though, about, as you said, whether or not the Constitution can stand having an
Withstand it?
authoritarian
Yeah.
in the executive branch.
Because is it the First Amendment? I'll say it wrong. First Amendment Defense Act. That's the one that seems to be
Oh,
most.
the religious liberties thing again.
But I'm
I
wondering.
don't want to bake your
there's-
cake.
There's a couple of areas that we really have to be concerned
Vigilant.
about. This First Amendment Defense Act, it's like a religious exemption act for government employees, for others. It would allow for the Kim Davises of the world to turn away licenses, so government employees would not have to deal with people who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender. So even if you don't, take away marriage equality, you turn it into a kind of second-class kind of marriage. The other thing that is very worrisome is that a judge just ruled that in Texas that transgender people are not covered under Obamacare, even though the regulation said that, right? Says that they should be covered, and used Hobby Lobby and the Hobby Lobby decision as the rationale for that. Now, that decision was a local federal judge. There's only 3 weeks, but he did it for the country. He created an injunction for the whole country. There's only 3 weeks of this administration, I think, not even.
Yep.
So it's not going to be appealed by this administration. It's not going to be appealed by the next. And he just sent a message to judges across the country, and Trump will be filling up hundreds of
Open
judicial
positions,
spots,
yeah.
that it's okay to use Hobby Lobby to tell bakers and florists and healthcare providers and other businesses they can turn away people based on religious exemptions. And by the time all that works up to the Supreme Court, there'll definitely be one other Supreme Court justice that replaces Scalia, but there might be another one replacing somebody else, and that's where we have to worry.
And that's where two things to that point. Is there a danger, and everyone's telling me no, but is there a danger, both of you are married, is there a danger of that being overturned, marriage equality?
I think
With Sessions, who's
we have to
Attorney
move-
General, and
Yeah, we have to move forward with anything is possible. Look at Roe v. Wade. Look at how
Chipped
far
away and
they've
chipped
gotten,
and chipped, yeah.
they're on the brink. If they do replace two judges, if they replace Scalia and then replace anyone else, it could be the end of Roe v. Wade. It could be marriage equality. They could give it back to the states, and say we're not banning it.
On both those issues, though, on like a Roe v. Wade or a marriage equality, there has to be a case that comes before the Supreme Court that tests the previous decision, correct? So there'd have to be a marriage case that winds its way through for someone to say gay marriage is unconstitutional. I mean, it has to be argued again, correct? It can't just
Right.
simply be overturned. And it's the same with Roe v. Wade. That's why states have done what they've done. They've managed to box in
Right.
the given
But
right.
it could be a law that's passed by Texas that says we've decided we're banning marriage again. It could be anything.
You're right, but then someone has to address the law,
Right.
and then it has to climb up through the appellate
Yeah.
division, eventually to the Supreme Court. But a case does have to be presented. So I don't suspect that. I don't know. I find it
I think it's a hard one for them.
to relitigate that.
I think it's a difficult one, but I do think they can do all of these things to, as I said, make it into a kind of second-class marriage, a different marriage, a marriage that has all these exemptions for people who don't believe in that kind of marriage, which is quite stunning because, if you're Christian, you still have to serve Jews when they get married. You have to bring flowers to their wedding. You have to bring, even though that is something against your religion because they're members of another religion. But we hold that is something that is discriminatory. The idea that we would say, well, it's okay to discriminate is very problematic.
It goes back. I'm sorry. It goes to the core of this that I've seen since I came out and have been in the LGBT marketing space since you've been writing, and the core of the issue, in my opinion, always comes down to you just don't like the fact that somebody could be oriented differently. And the norm is heterosexuality, and even, you can go back, I don't know how far you have to go back to show people's writings about this is what the nature shows us, the animal kingdom says it should be a male and a female. But it comes back right down to that, like either a revulsion or a non-understanding of just differently wired, and basically trying to impose a norm that just doesn't.
You
It's
can't use
foolish.
logic, John.
Well, there we go. Yeah. There we go. Logic again.
Did you see a couple of days ago, Chuck Schumer, who's the senator from New York and the leader of the Democrats now in the Senate, had said that Rachel Maddow asked him, did you see the interview?
Yes.
She asked him about the Supreme
Last
Court.
night, I believe.
Right, and he had said that he wasn't so sure that they'll ever put forward a candidate that the Democrats would approve, and essentially that seat may just stay open. Is that possible?
Look, Republicans were arguing that
Yeah.
with Hillary Clinton. If she had put forth any nominee, they would block that nominee. I mean, it started with one they didn't agree with, then they said they would block any nominee.
So unless there's a huge swing one way or the other, it could just sit vacant. Could it just sit vacant
It
for a while?
could sit vacant. It really would be problematic for the court. They will try to argue that Democrats are obstructing, but they're the ones who
Started it.
obstructed. They could also bring forth somebody like Merrick Garland, who, a lot of them kind of liked, right?
Right.
I mean, they could.
I was wondering if that could be a surprise play. If someone said we're putting forward Merrick Garland, and then suddenly the same guy you've been
Well,
ignoring now you
I
have
do think it would be smarter of Trump to try to do something to win over the majority of Americans, because the majority of Americans are
Did not
opposed to
vote,
him.
yeah.
They are opposed to his agenda. He did not win with a majority. And a president in that position would want to do some things to win people over. And, he is taking credit for this thing with the ethics office, but it's going to have to be a lot bigger than that.
I'm sure you read the same stuff I do, and the article I read was that by the time he chimed in, representatives from across the country had been inundated,
Flooded.
specifically Republican reps, with angry constituents. Literally, what are you doing? And they thought this was going to be some kind of like, oh, no one's going to notice, right?
Yeah. And you can actually, the counter thing about Trump's Twitter feed is you can find his Twitter followers telling him, his own voters telling him, what is going on with this? What are you doing? Da, 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 da. I mean, when he said Happy Hanukkah, they were angry. Well, I didn't vote for you to support Jews. So you can actually see them challenging him, and he's got to be thinking about his own supporters.
How are they allowing, when President Obama came into office, he was a huge sports fan and wanted to check
They took it away.
sports
I remember-
scores on his
yeah.
BlackBerry, remember? And they took it
There's a
away,
whole thing
said it
about
wasn't
that.
secure, it could be hacked into, whatever. It just seems like the rules don't apply to Trump, unless when he becomes president,
I've
they say,
wondered that.
Okay,
if-
so my guess is that whatever device he's using is strictly for him to do tweeting or whatever. But if it's government communication, it has to go through the
but
encrypted.
he's president.
Welcome to the
Obama
look,
could say, I'm just looking at sports scores. I mean, it's...
you're asking a question about the same guy who's not believing that not just 1, 2, 5, but thousands of people who work for our multiple intelligence agencies are all full of shit.
Yeah.
And that he'll believe what he wants to believe. It's the new world of, well, I've heard you say this on your show a couple of times. Facts are no longer facts. Or facts are facts when they suit your argument, but if they're not
Yes,
facts.
he will believe the intelligence agencies when they say Iran really is pursuing.
There you go.
nuclear
Yeah.
weapon.
The Dick Cheney model.
Yeah.
Hey, we're speaking with Michelangelo Signorile. Be sure to catch his show at SiriusXM if you have satellite radio. He's on weekdays at 3 p.m. East on the Progress Channel. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to finish up with Mike. I have a question for you about whether you'll ever consider going into politics.
Oh, I have a question that's different from that.
Oh, good. So stay with us. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Michelangelo Signorile.
Brought to you by the redesigned Volkswagen Passat, where family happens. Visit VW.com to learn more. You're listening to The Focus Group
I said to my girlfriend just the other day, monsters are interesting, I said.
with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
And I'll bet you meet a lot of interesting people, too.
Welcome back to the Focus Group. John Nash with my good friend and co-host Tim Bennett, and sitting right next to me is the incomparable Michelangelo Signorile. Hear his daily show, Monday to Friday, 3 p.m. East on the SiriusXM platform, and it's the Progress channel. What number is Progress?
127.
127. Uno, dos.
Do you miss out, Q?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, well, Mike was on Progress a long time
No, I know,
before.
but I'm wondering, have your questions, since the election, have the calls been different on your current show?
It's been different on Progress in general. It's a much wider audience of people that include LGBT people, but obviously a lot of heterosexuals and a lot of people who are of different
It's not a narrow band.
minority
yeah.
groups, and I'm really proud that we have a really diverse audience, really big audience of people of color, women who call. So it's broader, and it's helped me to. People have called and said, "You've educated me about LGBT issues. I used to believe this, and this." And yet it's still a space where LGBT people can feel comfortable. But I think it's a different space than when you're, on OutQ, it was your safe space, right? And it was your kind of, others could listen in, but it was the home
Yeah,
of
that's true.
people
That's
who
a good
were
point.
LGBT. And that's what's a little bit different. But I think it's important to kind of bring that message broader.
Now, do you want to ask your question first?
Well,
You're about politics, right?
yeah. So
you
no,
go ahead.
I was wondering whether someone like yourself, who is obviously well informed, and would you ever consider, or have you considered going into politics?
Never.
State senator or congressperson or
Never.
Yeah, even at the
never.
state or city level.
no?
Never. The whole the whole aspect of it where you have to at some point worry about or compromise, or this donor or that donor might get angry, or this group might get angry. That gives me the creeps. And two, I feel like I have such a record of things out there
Oh my God.
that
Yeah.
I have said
From a vetting
and
point of
done,
view,
and
yeah.
that forget about it.
Yeah,
You know, it would be used against me everywhere.
But to pick up on that question, but to switch it around, you have your career has been built and nurtured on activism, on being an incredibly wonderful and intellectual voice and smart voice for our community.
Thank you.
In a different world, would you have liked to have been a children's book author, or like what? I mean, I'm serious. Like if someone hit the reset button today and said, Mike, you're giving you 30 extra years on the clock, but you can't do this politics stuff. You got to do something
I
else.
know what he would say he would do. Can I guess?
What?
Be an architect.
No.
Okay. I thought I remember you saying that once.
But
Somewhere.
close. I had thought about that, but I was really into geology.
Okay.
I would love to be a volcanologist or something. You know, that would really be
Well, the
exciting.
title alone opens doors, right? Volcanologist,
I mean,
Michelangelo Signorile.
I probably, if not for being gay and AIDS happening, I would have been a journalist covering other issues.
Okay.
Because that's where my career began.
So the passion lies
And it
in
was
finding
only-
the story, finding facts.
Right.
Okay.
It was only kind of grappling with HIV and the epidemic that thrust my journalism that way. I was in entertainment journalism.
true.
I
That's
was
right.
doing celebrity stuff. So
And you were at Syracuse University through journalism school. So that's really what you wanted to do as a. Well, you're still doing it.
yeah, yeah, and you know,
I think it's a fascinating thing because I talked to someone recently who said most careers are in some ways accidental. There's a trajectory and then there's something that takes it off course ever so slightly, and now you're in a different direction. And you just actually gave a great example of that with the HIV/AIDS crisis. Because when you look back, and we've all been there, you know, who was standing up to do that? And there was some very key people that, you know, we're going to start talking about it and we're going to make it happen. That is making the FDA fast-track drug. I mean, you could go down a list.
and we're going to need that now among a whole new generation that grew up among the Obama years and thought, you know, oh, this is how it is. you know?
Actually, I will tell you this. I'm not thrilled with the results of the election, but at the same time, I said to Tim the day we were literally here the day after recording, and Hillary had appeared at the hotel that we have.
Next to the TikTok
we eat
diner.
the TikTok diner all the time before coming over here, and it was a really strange day. But I kept saying to Tim, you know, this is bad or good. This is a wake up call for us to not take anything for granted, and I never took it for granted. I'd never have taken our strides for granted, but I do think if you're in your 20s, you grew up with TV and movies and, you know, inclusion in a very unique way. I still think there are huge problems across the country. I still think people are very scared to come out sometimes. You know, it depends on the community you live in, but hopefully the younger generation is going to look to us for guidance to say, okay, they want to take this away. What do we do? Well, we got to do this, this, and this. And it's all politics is local. You got to start at this level, whatever it is. So I'm kind of an optimist, even though as the cabinet picks are announced and stuff, I'm like, oh my God, it's a rogues gallery.
You can't look. A period of mourning
Yeah.
was important. Grief is
But
important.
look ahead.
But you can't. You know, all of these people will write me on Twitter and say, "But they have everything. They have the House. They have the Senate. They have the Supreme Court. They have the executive." Well, what are you going to do? People have been in worse situations around the world and in this country, and they fought and they.
Oh,
won.
you'll love this.
So
we saw the friend that we were visiting, whose daughter was in from Rome. The daughter says to me, because she's been living in Rome for many years, she worked on the show Rome that HBO did years ago, and that's where she met her husband. And so she's talking, and she said the day after the election in Italy, people are like, "What are you guys worried about? It's nothing. We had Berlusconi for like 11 or 12 years.
Yeah.
And they didn't exactly fall into the sea. It wasn't the best time, but they're all like, you know, you have to go through this." So it's a different perspective, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be jarring and it's going to be angering and it's going to be scary, but there's nothing you can do but fight. I mean, we know that.
But does the challenge excite you?
Not particularly. Because I saw challenges if Hillary Clinton won.
Correct.
And I was ready for those challenges. And this takes us back to a different place.
2 steps forward, 1 big step back. Yeah. Although hopefully it's not going to be too far back.
I'm wondering how successful the Women's March is going to be the day after
The
the inauguration. I know they said that they've
I've
got
heard
quite
a lot of people going down.
yeah.
It seems like a lot of people, and it seems like it's become a way for people to channel their anger about the election. And I'm glad that it's focused around women. And, after what Trump said and still was able to be elected.
Right, and you're worried about you?
But you heard a lot of the same things we did. And I was talking to a friend who went home over the holidays, and he voted for Hillary, and the family voted for Trump. And he decided to go into the family holiday situation not judging. But he had a conversation with some of his relatives, and he said it was the most fascinating thing because they had a whole list of negatives about Hillary, and their list of negatives about Trump were equal in length. They literally had zero feeling for either. They were disgusted by the choices they were presented, and in the end, they went with something that to them had an element of unpredictability as opposed to what they could almost predict. I can't say that's any way you would game a system or go to the casino or even bet on a ball game, but there's a kernel of that resonates, and I'm like, I get it.
Well, 4 more years of Obama, or did you want change? I mean, that's what people had said.
Yeah.
But what bothers me about it is that they tolerated racism.
They overlooked it.
They
Yeah.
tolerated bigotry. And now they're in such a quandary. I've written a couple of these articles about a friendship that I broke off, and they are going crazy because they can't. They're angry that they're saying we're calling them racist. I said, no, we're not calling you a racist. You tolerated racism, and they can't excuse that.
Interesting shade there.
And is there really a difference? They can't excuse that. There's no way they can, they say, but Hillary, but what? There are people who are going to be quite possibly thrown out of the country, families ripped apart. You tolerated that.
And that's where Bernie Sanders, I thought, had the most brilliant comeback. You probably saw the same panel I did where they talked to a bunch of Trump voters. Oh, he didn't really mean that. Oh, he didn't really mean that. He's not going to deport people. He's not going to take away health care. And then Bernie Sanders just looks at him and says, so you voted for someone who lied to you?
Right.
You voted for a liar? Right? So if you didn't believe everything he
question
said,
for
then
you,
why did
though.
you vote for him?
If the candidate had been Bernie, would the outcome be the same?
I'll leave that to the expert.
I think so. I don't.
You
I
do
I think so, yeah.
I think they would have had a whole other list. The people you talked about would have had a whole other list that would have had a picture of him with Fidel Castro, socialism.
Brought up his
Socialism.
wife's issues,
Socialism.
right, his
Point,
wife's
good point.
issues.
We cannot take out of this the FBI, the letter, Comey, the Russian hacking, and I think whatever we find out about that, there would have been some version of that if Obama was running again, if Bernie Sanders were running. A lot happened in this election.
You're right about that.
So one last question then. What are you encouraged about for 2017? Are you encouraged by one or two particular things?
I'm glad to see that we had the end of the horrific North Carolina governor, even though North Carolina
yeah.
is in disarray. I'm glad that we saw the first Latina woman elected to Senate, the first Somali American elected to the Congress. I think we saw some real firsts. And, Democrats did actually gain seats in both chambers, even if they're still on the outside. And I think we have the ability to turn this around. I think, we can do this, and people are energized.
There's your positive note.
We want to thank you for joining. And Michelangelo, we've got new socks for you.
Oh,
You probably have more than anybody.
wear them all the
7-year
time.
collection. Oh, you do? I thought they were like in there wrapping.
Yeah, he has them posted on it. Yeah, they're on the wall. So it's a focus group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. We want to thank Michelangelo Signorile for joining us. He's given us the pleasure of joining us as our first guest at the start of each year, all but one when his book had come out in April. And
I think we saw him later.
We saw him later. So we want to thank him for joining us. Be sure to check out Michelangelo on SiriusXM Radio's Progress Channel 127, 3 p.m. East. And what's your website if people want to contact you?
Signorelli.com.
Signorelli.com. There's his book. Get it. It's a great book. It's the focus group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. We want to thank our partner here, Volkswagen of America, who's been supporting us now for 7 years as well.
7 point something.
7 point,
We're
yes,
moving to the
something
8th
years.
year. We're moving to
And
the 8th year.
be sure to check out all the great cars Volkswagen has to offer. John and I just picked up our new all-track Golf sports wagons, which are 4Motion all-wheel drive. And great cars for this type of weather and in the dry pavement, John. It parallels well. You like all that tech.
I am still loving that car, and it
Good
drives,
acceleration.
I can't say enough good things.
So head over to VW.com and check out all the great cars that Volkswagen has to offer. And have a great week, everyone. Take care.
It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Formerly on SiriusXM Satellite Radio and now accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.